Office of Research Advancement. We exist to help faculty with getting research development grants. We can provide you with proposal development services all the way from the very beginning of outlining your funding announcement with you, all the way through submission at the deadline, at the due date of the proposal. Of course, you're attending one of our grant writing workshops. We hold these every semester and during the summer, every other week, where we try and give you guys some information to help in your grant writing or proposal writing endeavors. And as I said, we will support you from the very beginning, from the time that you go in. This says intent to submit, but it's now been changed and you're about to learn about that. All the way from that initial notification that you're going to submit a proposal, all the way through the final submission date, as I said. So Chanda?
Okay, we wanted to just review with you the what we take care of and the roles that we have within our office. So as Kim said, we assist you from sometimes before your writing begins. We will send you RFPs that we think are aligned with your research. You can certainly send us your research interests and we will look out for particular opportunities. If you have something, have a white paper or have some research already in mind specifically, we can also search for grants that align with that. But as Kim said, we assist you with your outlining of the RFP, timeline development, any general suggestions. We review your RFP, and when we review your proposal or work with you on your proposal, we try to make sure that everything is aligned with what the funders are asking for. We can assist you with document gathering, with reaching the office here for data. If there's questions regarding specific federal funders, the Office of Development works with foundations, but our office works with all of the, works to support you with the federal funders. We can help to build interdisciplinary teams, communicate with agency program officers and representatives, facilitate PI meetings or attend PI meetings. We often have meetings set up each week with various faculty members and their teams so we can work throughout the proposal. The reviewing and editing of your documents and your proposal, and then other needs that you may have individualized on an as needed basis. But we are here, as Kim said, to assist you throughout the process and from even before the process in your research. And it's imperative, we'll talk about this more in depth, but submit the proposal notification form so that we can work with you from the very beginning. Next slide.
So as Chanda said, we will send you funding announcements if we think it's tailored to your research or whatever, but you can also look for funding opportunities. And where can you do that? Well, our website, PVAMU.edu Research ORA, has a funding opportunities listing. So you can go there. It also has a direct link to grants.gov. Grants.gov is any federal agency out there. You can go in and it'll show you what's available from USDA, from the Department of Defense, and you can either search by keyword or you can narrow it down by funding agency. Additionally, Prairie View uses pivot.com. Now this gets you foundational and federal funding opportunities, and it's much more comprehensive than either grants.gov or going to an individual funder's website. So all of these tools are here at your disposal to find funding opportunities for your research.
So the process, and we know that this is review for many of you, but I don't think we can say it enough, that the process is that when you, well, of course, if you have interest, email us individually or email both of us with your research interest. But once you are ready to, or think you might be ready to, or have an inkling you might be ready to submit a proposal, you want to go ahead, go to the research page, click on research advancement, and then you want to fill out the proposal notification form. The Office of
Sponsored Programs.
Thank you. Sponsored Programs and the Office of Pre-Award, thank you. They would rather that you submit a proposal notification form and then determine that you are not going to follow through than that you don't notify. So go ahead and fill it out if you are even considering completing a proposal. So next, we have a pop quiz for you before we begin, like a preemptory quiz. So just think about the answers and we're going to go through. Also, you could put an answer in the chat or you can unmute yourself and give an answer. So the first question, if you are considering responding to an RFP or writing for an unsolicited funding and or being a subrecipient. So what that means is if you are, for example, we're working with someone right now who there wasn't a particular funding announcement, but agencies do have an unsolicited form with guidelines for how to submit that. So if you're considering doing that, if you're going to be a subrecipient, if in any way you are looking at funding, how do you notify the university? It's a quiz. Any guesses? Someone want to say it out loud?
Anybody? Going once, going twice. You put in the proposal notification form.
Yes, thank you. And not only does it notifies the university, but it notifies multiple people within our office. It notifies the director, Dr. Krish, it notifies the Office of Sponsored Programs, and it notifies Kim and I so that we can all get ready for in our various roles to support you in this work. When should researchers submit the proposal notification form? We've really given it away. Somebody, anybody, everybody.
As soon as possible.
Thank you. We
you.
appreciate you. Yes, you should submit it as soon as possible, as soon as there's an inkling or a thought, even if it's not definitive, even if it's not definite. The next question is, what are the benefits of submitting the proposal notification form? One benefit. Surely there's someone typing in the chat. I'm certain of it because they don't want to just hear us talk.
It allows the research office to know how many people are going to submit, so they're ready with the timeline and help from both of you.
Thank you so much. So yes, there's an easy online submission. It's not long. One-stop shop. You can receive assistance with all of the components of your process. As Dr. Fernando said, less rush, options for interdisciplinary assistance. We can help you build out a team. You'll get a to-do list, outline assistance, and then you, it's possible the earlier you submit, the more we have time to give you multiple reviews of your work or look at various documents and help you prepare those or help you not prepare them, but help you review those documents so that all along we can make sure things are in place. And so the next question is, why not just call and let OSP know? Why not just give Elizabeth or Vita a call and say, you know what, I'm going to submit? What are the drawbacks of that? This one we didn't really cover, so this would be on the fly.
So if you just call OSP and let them know, then Chanda and I don't get an email that says that you're submitting.
Right, so only the person that you call will be notified, and it leaves out all those other opportunities to support you in your work. And then the last question of our pop quiz is, what limitations are there when you submit the proposal notification form shortly before the deadline? So sometimes, and we know that things happen, but sometimes you might just forget, or sometimes you might not notify the Office of Research and Innovation until, or the division until shortly before the deadline, a week before, 2 weeks before. What are the drawbacks of that for you, for the researcher? Kim, go ahead.
Again, you don't get to work with Chanda and I, and we don't get to work with you. And, you know, it also helps OSP and Elizabeth and Vita set up their timelines to help get your proposal submitted, because you are not the only one submitting a proposal. There could be 5 people 1 week, or as an example, in September, when the USDA 1890 CBG grants are due, there's 15. So 15 faculty members will be submitting on that day. So if you wait till 2 days before and your due date happens to be the same as that date, you might get left out, or you might not get, you know, all of the help that you might need. So the earlier you notify us, the earlier you notify OSP, the better it is for you.
We are both very enthusiastic about working with you and also really interested in the research. I am always fascinated by the various research projects in the various disciplines. And so we really do want to be able to assist you and allow you time, and if necessary, meet with you. So right now we have 3 or 4 faculty members each that we are working with on a weekly basis. And so we want to make sure, and we will make sure, that we give you the amount of time needed to support you in your work, and that it allows us the time to review your proposal. It generally takes us about a week if we're just reviewing the proposal. And then of course, if we're working with you throughout, we are more than happy to do that. And we can set up times, we can set up biweekly times, we can meet with you as needed. But it really is helpful in terms of our office being able to support you and do our jobs, and for you to be able to get everything you need so that we can submit the best proposal possible so you can get funded.
And another thing is with grants and proposals becoming much more multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary, we can also help you put those teams together and make connections, especially on the campus of Prairie View. So that's just another thing to keep in mind. Chanda, anything else you would like to add?
That's it. Next slide.
So the doctor is in, as in Chanda and myself, and we're here to give you advice on how you might go about writing a concise and focused proposal.
So the first thing that we thought about was if there was just one single solitary piece of advice we could give, if that was all we were able to give. Kim? Always read.
Anybody know the answer?
What it is that you should always read if there was only one thing we could tell you. The funding announcement, always. And I know a lot of you are like, well, of course, but we do encounter over the years lots of times where someone might hear about, a faculty member might hear about the funding, or they might skim what's on grants.gov and never fully go through the funding announcement. And we will go through it, but it's really important that you as the PI, and if you're a co-PI, go through it as well so that you can be aware of each and everything that's required within the RFP. And again, we know that for a lot of you, it's just second nature, but it's a really good reminder. It's something that we just want to make sure that every single person who's considering funding makes sure to do. So then the one of the reviewers' comments that we see all the time when we see reviews is that it was a sound concept. It might even be a great, well-written proposal, but it didn't fit their current funding opportunities, or it didn't align with the RFP. So again, we are just really reiterating that. And so for an example, if it's a training grant or a proposal that really emphasizes education, but it also is emphasizing engineering or working with ag, but it's a training grant, then it's imperative that you have some work aligned with pedagogy, that you talk in some depth about training and what that setup will look and how it's going to support students and fit in with the university as a whole. And what we find sometimes is that the science will be really deep, cutting edge, amazing science, and then there will just kind of be training or education that's an afterthought. And that's just an example, but it could happen in any disciplines. So because that is kind of the #1 piece of feedback that comes through our offices that we see, we just wanted to reiterate reading the RFP and then making sure that your work and your research aligns with what the funders are interested in.
And so to figure out if you're in alignment with a certain program or with a certain research, plans at either like NSF or NIH, and we talk about reading the RFP, here are some things that you should just kind of focus on and look at, and it will help you in bringing your ideas together and then getting words to paper for the proposal. So obviously you want to look at the proposal solicitation number. This is important. You'll have to give OSP this number so they know what funding opportunity you're submitting to. At the top here, there will always be the directorates or the institutes or the entities involved in this funding opportunity. So in this case, this is the HBCU EIR solicitation from NIH, and you can see that all of their directorates are involved because it's it's an NSF-wide program. The other thing to be cognizant of are your due dates. So here, there's a letter of intent that's required before the proposal due date. But always pay attention to the due dates. And again, the earlier you can notify us, the more help and assistance you can get. Another thing to pay attention to that helps sometimes, because they'll change requirements or they'll add something, is to look at this additional or important information and revision notes. For NIH, I think it's like additional information, and they'll always have changes that are listed here, or a change with a link that takes you to some information about what they want for the proposal. Again, looking at the proposal, you can get the award information. So here they say they get 25 awards. They have a $10 million funding amount anticipated. So then you can kind of gauge like how much money you can ask for in your budget. Eligibility information. This is important, especially if it says that there is a limited number of proposals for each organization. That means that as Prairie View, as an institution, can only submit a certain number. And that adds another layer to the submission process, in that you have to go through an internal competition to be selected to move on to put in a full proposal. And I'm sure just about everybody here is aware of that process. We may at a later date go more in depth into it. And then the most important thing in conjunction with this presentation is proposal preparation and submission instructions. In addition to getting information, background information about the program that tells you what they're looking for, this part here will tell you what you need to put in your proposal. Some funding announcements are more detailed than others. NSF, if they have some specific requirement for the proposal, it will be listed here, like you have to have in your title HBCU EIR, and then the title of your proposal. Or maybe there's a certain there's certain content that they want within the project narrative. That is all here in this proposal preparation and submission instructions. So again, we don't know this off the top of our head, and I'm sure nobody out there can remember from funding announcement to funding announcement, unless you do it every year, what's required. So again, always read the funding announcement so that you can make sure that your research aligns with the funding announcement and the program. So again, before you write, as we've said, you want to make sure you find the right program. You want to identify the program priorities. NSF, each directorate, if you go to their website, they have links and they'll tell you what their research priorities are. NIH is the same way. Each institute has information on their website that tells you what research they're interested in. And then if you find a program, say like a NIH, this happened just recently, they had a proposal in the Math and Physical Sciences Directorate for early investigators. And we had a faculty member at Prairie View who wanted to apply to this, but it turned out that her research didn't really fit what the program was looking for. So if this happens, you can contact the program officer, obviously, but you can also look at recent awards. So each funding agency has a database of what's been awarded, or you can go in and look at abstracts. And so you can go in and you can see if there's abstracts that kind of are similar to the research you're doing, then that's probably the program for you to apply to. Additionally, get some feedback, and you can talk to your peers about it, but the best feedback would be from the program officers. And I don't know how many NSF webinars I've been to recently where the program officers have been like, please contact us. That's what we're here for. And their thing is ask early, ask often. That's their little slogan right now. So, you know, put together 1 to 2 page description of your project or of your research, whatever you want to do. And, you know, you can, like Chanda said, if it's a white paper or even if it's a 2-page thing you want to send to a program officer, you can send it to us and we'll look through it and we'll talk with you about what you want to do and maybe give you some suggestions or ideas. But then, email the program officer, attach your description of what you want to do, and then, they will get back to you. It might take them a couple of days, maybe even a week, depending on how busy they are, but they will get back to you with feedback. And that's like probably the most important feedback you could get as far as making sure that you are in the right program or you have the right funding opportunity to move forward. And then again, establish a time frame for writing and submitting the proposal. The more time you give yourself, the more time you give us to help you, the better things can be. So like Chanda said, if you can have your proposal done 2 weeks before it's due, you can send it to us. We can give it a week where we really go in depth and edit and make comments, give you feedback to send back to you. You still have a week where you can, address the comments and try and make your proposal better, or, if there's something we think you should add or take out, we'll let you know. So again, be smart, have specific goals, measurable goals, achievable goals, something that's realistic and that you can achieve in a timely fashion, not only writing your proposal, but also with your research project. Sponsors will fund projects that have a good chance of achieving their goals. So what does this mean? Well, they're looking for novel ideas or novel research, but they also want to, when they look at it, they want to know that basically it's feasible. Can you do it? Do you have the facilities to do it? Do you have the support to do it? Do you have, are you trying to go to the moon, or are you just, trying to build a rocket or a rocket booster or something? And you want to make sure that whatever your research plan is, it addresses what questions either come from the program priorities or that you have established in your proposal, and that it's well justified. So again, by going and reading the funding announcement, it will help you craft each of these bullet points when you're writing your proposal. And remember that your proposal is not a manuscript or paper. Papers that go to your specific journals in your specific areas can get very, very specific. They can have a lot of area-specific jargon. And sometimes the reviewers of the proposals are in your area, but they may have they may not be specifically in your area. Or in some cases, your proposal might get sent to an ad hoc committee, and these people, while they have technical expertise, may not have an expertise in your specific field. So you want to make sure that you're not using too many big words, or you're using a lot of technical jargon that could lose the reader or reviewer.
So along those lines, we realize that this slide is incredibly busy and that there's words everywhere. This is, I know some of you have been reviewers. This is what it's like when a reviewer is reviewing lots and lots of proposals, and it's jargon after jargon after jargon. Now, some are going to be experts in your area and some are not. Some are going to be reading kind of as a layperson outside of the area. And it needs to be really clear. And when we review it, we try to work on cutting down extra fluff, on not too much jargon, on making sure that everything is concise and clear, that less is more. So Kim, if you can click, please. Okay, so what this is saying, so here's a rather convoluted way of saying something. No person shall, on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, the day preceding a public holiday or on a public holiday, drive or cause to be driven between the hours of 6 p.m. and midnight a motor vehicle which exceeds 10.5
meters.
Thank you, in length in all main roads. So that conveys a super, super important message, but that message is incredibly difficult to understand. Before you click, can anyone tell me a more simplistic way of what you think that message is trying to convey? This is just a little funny example of what we're talking about. Anyone? Guesses? Chat? Okay, go ahead, Kim. So in other words, no trucks on weekends and holidays is what it was saying. And again, click one more time. This is what was coming across initially. And so it's kind of a lighthearted, silly way of saying it, but it is exactly getting to the point of you really want to be crystal clear, eliminate extra terms, and get right to the meat of what you're saying. One of the things that reviewers say and that we've said in our work over the years is that if you can capture the reviewer's attention right away, if the reviewer can align with what you're talking about, know what you're talking about, and understand the research clearly, then you have a much better chance of getting funded, and they will go ahead and read your research in a different way. You don't want to turn them off page one. And it's one of the things that reviewers say all the time. If you don't grab them right away, or they kind of get lost in the words, and I know we've all done this when we're reading and we're kind of like, wait, what did I read? And you have to read it again and again and again. We don't want that to happen to you, and you don't want that to happen to you. Next. So as another example, here's a more convoluted way. The objective of this study is to develop an effective communication strategy for solar energy systems by analyzing the factors that are impeding commercial projects and by prioritizing the potential government and industry actions that can facilitate the viability of the projects. Great, wonderful. And what? And so a more concise way of getting that across to your reviewers and to your audience is that this study will consider why current solar energy systems have not yet reached the commercial stage and will evaluate the steps that industry and government can take to make these systems commercial. So it's just, and this is out of some advisement from reviewers, but it's really just about making everything clear and concise and realizing that you are not, in this case, necessarily talking to an audience of your peers, and whether it's the sciences, the biological or physical sciences, if it's ag, if it's engineering, if it's education, social science, in every field, as you know. I know we're talking to an audience that knows all of these things, but we really just want to reiterate that the more direct you can be, the more you can reach directly to people who are not in your discipline, the better. Next. So just a couple of quotes to probably say too much, even though we're saying less. The more you say, the less people remember that we know that. The more you can get to what you're saying in a short amount of time, you don't have to reach the maximum number of pages, but you do want to still be as detailed as possible within the science. So it's a very, very precise place to be concise and yet be clear with your science. There's a great many power in words if you don't hitch too many of them together. And this picture at the bottom is what we do via track changes with proposals. And so we go through, we ask lots of questions that are for your consideration, and we'll put those in track changes. We'll make notes, we'll make corrections. And again, all of it is to support you and for your consideration as the PI. And you don't necessarily have to make those changes. You can certainly ask us questions back. Sometimes researchers will do that. Well, we'll ask questions, they'll ask questions back, and we'll kind of have a give and take. We can meet about the work, but what you're going to get back from us, whether it's one document at a time or the entire proposal, are the track changes and questions and any comments we have, any advisement, any place that we don't see that it aligns with the RFP. And then if there's particular places where the work is really strong or really hits it home, we'll also give you that feedback. And one of the things that NHS, that's a different organization, NIH advises is that you read articles that are published in Scientific American, because it is scientists that are using accessible language to teach a general readership about these complex subjects. And if you go to our library website, then you can access all of the past years, you can access current editions of Scientific American. There are many, many journals, but this is just one that NIH advises that you look at in terms of being concise and really using language that reaches a broader audience. in doing looking at things that we could provide as examples for this presentation, one researcher said that their epiphany came when they realized that grant programs did not exist to make them more successful, but rather their job was to make the programs or the funders successful. And so it goes back to, how does your work help advance the funding agency's goals? And how are you going to be sure that the reviewers and the readers and those at the funding agency are very clear on how it meets their goals? So how is it a win-win, a win for the university and for you and for your work and getting funded so you can do cutting edge work, so you can train students, so that you can reach different levels within research? And then how can you assist the funding agency in reaching their goals through your phenomenal, groundbreaking research?
So one of the ways to kind of do this, if you haven't served on a review panel or as a grant reviewer, is to try and put yourself in the role of the grant reviewer. Grant reviewers tend to make their decisions based on a connection to your work. So you want to make sure that you, as Chanda said, you reach out and you grab them. And one way to do that is to use clear and simple language and to engage and explain. And I had one mentor in the past who was a grant reviewer for NIH say that, typically he got at least 10 proposals, if not 20. The most he got one time was like 40, and he was absolutely floored by that. But the grant reviewers are getting 10 to 20 proposals to review. And basically, since they have so many to review, what they kind of do is they read your abstract or your project summary to try and get a quick gist of what you're talking about. But a lot of them have said that when they get to the bottom of the first page, they want to be actively engaged and they want to flip the page to the second page to see what you're going to say and what you're going to do. So if you lose them somewhere in that first page, yes, they're going to finish your proposal, but they may not be excited by it, or it may become, boring to them. That's words they've used. But, so you want to keep things simple and avoid the extra language like Chanda showed in the truck example. But you also want to grab their interest. So you want to say, in the first paragraph or first couple of sentences, you want to say, hey, this is what's going on, and this is how I want to fix it, or some semblance of that. So and you want to, and in doing so, without actually putting in an outline form or whatever, you want to orient the reviewer to your project and to what's going to come next. So you want them to want to know what the next thing is what you're going to say. And you can do this by specifying the overall project goals in a certain way. Sometimes you can list it out as specific aims and then kind of follow that through. But you want to really try and use language that will engage the reviewer and not confuse them. And one other thing, for most funding agencies, you'll have 3 reviewers who will score your proposal. The first reviewer, the primary reviewer, is usually someone in your area of expertise, while the other 2 people might have a tangential role. They might be a chemist, but they're not an organic chemist, or it's ecology, but they're a cell biologist. So they have some expertise, but not a whole lot. So you want to make sure that when you're writing, as Chanda said before, that you're kind of not writing to a layperson, but you're writing to a general audience instead of a very specific audience. And hopefully this results in your proposal getting accepted. So to tie it all up, your proposal should communicate your project clearly and appropriately. Know your audience, in this case, know the program that you're applying to. You want to write clearly and in an appropriate style, and have these SMART goals of being specific and measurable. Make sure that whatever you say you can do that it's relevant to the times, and that your proposed timeline for your research is acceptable, is feasible. You want to, a good thing to do is employ repetition and emphasis throughout. You know, you can bold a sentence that you think is important, you can italicize it, you can underline it. You want to make sure that all of your documents tell a coherent story. So if you say in your proposal that you have the facilities or the equipment to do something, make sure your facilities and equipment document states that also. And this is the last 2 points are really, really important. And again, this is where Chanda and I can help you tremendously, is seek feedback from your peers and grant professionals. We can read and review your proposal for grammar and all kinds of things. We can make comments, but as Chanda said, a lot of the proposals we get are in our own personal expertise. You know, I'm a cell biologist, but I can read something about sweet potato genetics. I mean, that's not too far out of my realm, but you know, Chanda is an excellent educator and pedagogical stuff. She's like through the charts on. But if she's reading you know, she can read an engineering proposal and she'll understand kind of what's going on, but she doesn't have, or we don't have the knowledge base to say, hey, we think this is wrong. And so, or we think maybe you could do this differently. So by getting feedback from your peers, sometimes that can help codify your research plans and how you're going to do your research project. And leave yourself time, plenty of time to refine and edit, because the more times that you have to use our services and the more time that you give yourself to write, the better proposal you could put out.